The views expressed on the following show may not be those of the hosts, guests, or WSPN Skidmore Radio. Talk Saratoga is produced by Saratoga Broadcasting Incorporated and may not be reproduced in part or in whole unless expressed written approval is given. Now, here are the hosts of Talk Saratoga, Rick Thompson and a Saratoga All-Star.
Good morning and welcome to Talk Saratoga. I'm glad you're with me today. And today is the day before St. Patrick's Day, believe it or not, March the 16th. And probably a lot of people celebrate on Saturday night because tomorrow's Sunday and you don't like going out when you have to work the next day. Wink, wink. But Saturday night's going to be the biggest one. So drive safe because there's a lot of people on the road that are probably partying with you and a lot of people that aren't partying. So if you drink, drive careful or have someone else drive you. So this morning, we have a real special guest, and as you know, I work up at the track in the summer, security guard. I keep broadcasting that for the last 12 years, but we have the director of the National Museum of Racing and Hall of Fame, which is right across the street from the Saratoga track, and Cate Masterson is the director, and I'm happy to have her on today. Good morning, Cate.
Good morning. Well, thank you for having me. I'm happy to be here.
Oh, I'm happy you're here, too. You became the director how long ago of the museum?
So I was actually hired by the museum about 9 years ago as the development director, so fundraising. And after about 2 or 3 years of that, I became acting director, and I've been the director now, I would say, for just over 2 years.
That's great. So you did a great job in fundraising, and they wanted to make you director. That's good. Let's talk a little bit about the development of the Racing Museum, because it's undergone changes during the year, all for the better. And so why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
Absolutely. I'll start by saying that next year in 2025, we will be celebrating our 75th anniversary.
My.
So we have quite a bit coming up for that year. But back in 1950, Saratoga Springs, being the oldest continuous thoroughbred racetrack in North America, drew a lot of prominent racehorse owners from around the country and even around the world to Saratoga. And they thought no better place than here to have a national museum. So in 1950, they established the National Museum of Racing. And then we started in Canfield Casino. We set up our first collection items in 1951. And then in 1955, a building became available up for sale on Union Avenue at 191 Union Avenue. So we purchased that, and they decided, there's no Hall of Fame. So we're going to add on to the National Museum of Racing and make it the official Thoroughbred Racing Hall of Fame. So we are two-part. We're in one building. And the first Hall of Fame class was in 1955.
Well, and that, a lot of famous names from back then started the museum. They just felt like the Saratoga was the place, and that's pretty neat when you think about it.
Absolutely. They felt that, there needed to be a home for the artifacts, memorabilia, art that explained the sport, the history, and, some place that could just collect all of it. And then with the Hall of Fame, they decided the first year in 1955 to induct jockeys, trainers, and horses. They did not feel at that time that owners should be a part of the Hall of Fame because they felt like they'd be buying their way in.
Sure.
And which made sense. But now fast forward to 2013, and we added another Hall of Fame class called the Pillars of the Turf. And those are the exemplars of racing and how racing, without these men and women who are instrumental in the sport, it wouldn't be what it is today.
Yeah. Everything evolves, and today everything costs so much money that the individual ownership seems to be going down, and there's more syndicated owners of horses, which I guess makes sense because of the cost of, keeping keeping a racehorse, because they're not cheap to maintain. I mean, there's a lot that goes into a racehorse that people don't know. Backstretch and walking hot walkers every day and feeding and bathing, and so it does take a lot. I think you think that's a reason why the syndicates are today rather than individual owners?
Absolutely. There's no question about it. So, I mean, about 10 years ago, I worked for a racehorse trainer, and at that time, I think it was about $3,000 a month to own a racehorse, which is just astronomical. So, and how in today's day and age, anyone. And horse racing appeals to so many. I mean, horses, equine and humans, there's a connection there. So, you don't have to necessarily love horse racing, but horses themselves just are such a majestic animal that people can connect with. So the syndicates have grown. So the first syndicate that started was a gentleman named Cate Campbell. And I'm trying to think now what the name of his syndicate was, but it was 1960s, 1970s.
Okay.
And he was actually inducted as a pillar of the turf not too long ago. He has since passed away, but it was his brainchild of starting, a multiple owner partnership, because it is so expensive. And today's day and age, I'd say there's over probably 50 partnerships, and there's something for everyone. And part of the museum's mission is education. So one of our Saturday morning socials, which is complimentary admission, I believe it's Saturday, August 10th, we'll have a partnership and syndicate day where we invite them to come in and talk to people and educate them.
That's nice. It wasn't my first experience with horse racing, but one of my favorite, and I'll never forget this, when Secretariat, 1973, when he had his great year, and what they ended up doing at the end of the racing season, they paraded them around the track. And back in those days, they didn't get the crowds that they do today. I mean, it was busy, but not anything like it is today. And you could get up to the rail very easily. And when he passed by, I pet him. And I probably shouldn't have done that, because most racehorses would have been spooked. But that horse was such a hand, and he loved people, that he didn't even flinch, And I'll never forget that. That was and that's a memory that's branded in my mind. And the lady that owned him was an amazing lady. Matter of fact, when they made the movie Secretariat, a lot of Penny, I can't remember her last name, but I think everybody has an impression of coming to the races the first time. And you kind of take those memories and put them in the museum so people can look back at the beginnings of horse racing.
Well, it's just so ironic that you even bring up Secretariat. I mean, 1973 was his 3-year-old campaign year, where he won the Triple Crown and still holds track records at all 3. So last year in 2023, the museum traveled for the first time with a traveling exhibition on Secretariat. We went to Belmont, Pimlico, and Churchill. I did that backwards, but we went to the 3 tracks. And right now, we still have Secretariat's exhibition at the museum. His birthday is March 30th. And that's the last day that this exhibition will be open. And it is excellent. And there's a piece in there of just human interest stories of people who fell in love with Secretariat, exactly what you just told. I touched him on the rail. Penny Chenery, his owner, said something nice to me. I saw him at Claiborne, and they gave me a lock of his hair.
Oh, that's neat.
Even right down to, there was a young girl who's 12 years old, and she said, he's my favorite racehorse in the whole wide world. He's my favorite horse. I love him so much. And so I said to her, sweetie, why? You weren't even alive. And she said, the Disney movie, I just can't. I feel like I was there. I feel like I knew him. And he was regarded as the people's horse. And to this day, he still is, 51 years later.
I know. Well, I was going to say, Aladar and Seattle Slew, those names people in horse racing know. But people in horse racing and out of horse racing, if you mention Secretariat, everybody knows Secretariat, or they've heard that name a lot. And he was he was a people's horse. I mean, he loved people. And I remember when American Pharoah was here, They had that Friday morning breakfast so they could watch this 5-minute workout, and I think they had 15,000 people up here, and we had to be posted by the rails so that when people took pictures of him, they didn't have flashes because he would get spooked easy. But, I mean, these racehorses do have a following, and I want to dispel a myth right here that these thoroughbreds are so well taken care of. People have it in their head that they're mistreated and they're pushed. They are so well taken care of, it's not funny. I mean, they are pampered, and rightly so. So, you know, you get these people that say they're mistreated and they'll treat it, and they even have whirlpools for them.
We do, the Racing Museum has an Oklahoma training track tour, which is about an hour and a half. We do them at 9 a.m. We do them, by appointment. I think May through October, but then basically July and August during the racing season, we do them every morning. But we take people back through, and it's a historical tour because, of course, the first race was held at Oklahoma in 1863. But we talk about the horses in the schedule. And I mean, thoroughbreds are bred to race. Yep. I mean, their minds work that way. Their bodies are built that way. I worked for a racehorse trainer for 8 years, Kieran McLaughlin. One of the best men in the world, in my opinion.
He is.
And the horses, they are. I mean, it's amazing. So, I mean, I can tell one real quick story that, the Racing Museum, we promote the sport, we're education, we are the house of the industry. But we had a gentleman come in with his wife a few years ago after our major renovation in 2020. And he was, just a little disgruntled. Went up to the front desk. I'm here because my wife likes horses. I don't believe in the sport. I don't believe in, the mistreated. He got into, drugs. He got into every negative thing you could about the sport. And so our visitor services team, which does a great job, said, well, listen, sir, you're here. You're inside the building. Your wife's walking around. We have a 16-minute signature film, What It Takes Journey to the Hall of Fame. I would just ask, that you watch the film. Oh, yeah. He did. He came out of the film and he went up to the gentleman at Visitor Services and he said, I owe you an apology and I'd like to join at the highest level membership. He said, that film showed me a whole different side of the sport and what it takes and the number of people, and it's a community. It's 365, days a year, 24 hours, 7 days a week. And so that's our goal of the film. It's, you don't have to like horse racing or, even like the sport, but there's a community that for generations has been, and it is literally generations, family members,
sure.
grandchildren, the jockeys, the trainers, the colony. It is a family organization that is just enormous. And it's a community that is something, I find very special and close to my heart. So if anybody is, anti-horse racing, come and see the Racing Museum.
Well, no, and you know what? Sometimes that's what it takes because people have these misconceptions and they don't want to see the positives. They just pick up on a negative, which isn't true, and they perpetuate that. And like you gave an example here, I education is the best form of getting into whatever facet, there is. We talked about the opening and the founding. I just want to ask you a question. The first gift was for the project was I read it here, the $5,000 from the Saratoga Association. Now that was a local association. Back, I don't know if it was the 80s or 90s, there was a big thing going on that the city owned the racetrack. I don't know if you were here then. And then the state came in and said, no, they own the racetrack. And they went to court and...
So the way that I understand it, and of course it's not, I don't know, it's the New York Racing Association had owned all three racetracks, Aqueduct, Saratoga, and Belmont. So they owned the land. It was never in that I knew that the city of Saratoga Springs owned the land. It was the New York Racing Association. And then, yes, there was a deal where now New York State owns the racetrack land of all three.
Okay. The only way I remember this was because I had first moved up here, and there was a commissioner of finance who had been in there for like 30 years. And she said that Morrissey had donated the property to the city. but they couldn't find the deed.
Oh,
And that's how the state, this is from what I heard from some friends of mine that were in politics back then. And that was the thing that broke the deal with the city. And then the state said, no, we own it. And they looked for the deed, the city, because she swore it was, and she saw the deed, but they couldn't find it.
Oh my gosh, that's crazy. The one thing I will say from a historical standpoint, if and when you go to Saratoga Racecourse next, if you walk around outside kind of the backyard area and you're along the exterior of the building, there's white wrought iron that's absolutely beautiful. It kind of, it's the whole grandstand into the clubhouse. So it's the exterior looking into the building, and all that white wrought iron dates back to the 1800s, early 1900s. Really? And if you look closely, you'll see an SA for the Saratoga Association, and you'll also see horses that were in there, and some are flat horses and some are jumping horses, steeplechase and flat. But there's details that you just wouldn't normally pick up on. But yes, it was at one time the Saratoga Association.
Okay, that's interesting. I mean, I've been there and I've never noticed that. Of course, I don't get down that far.
Yeah.
But so it would be past the restaurant.
It's basically it's the whole exterior white iron of the building. So it should be anywhere.
Yeah, I'll have to go down and take a look at that. That's interesting, and you probably talk about that at on your Saturday excursions, because that's a really neat fact.
The other neat fact is that they actually still have one of the stone carriage steps. So when carriages used to come before automobiles, there's a carriage step where people used to get off onto the step and step down. So
that's neat. Yeah, I mean, Saratoga has a great history, and for so many years it's stayed the same. There's a lot of new building and stuff today. I guess you have to modernize, but it had so much history. People came from all over the place just because of the uniqueness and the beauty of the track.
Health, history, and horses.
That's right.
That's the motto.
Exactly. But so I always wondered about that, and she passed away, but she was a big advocate that Saratoga owned the.
Maybe it'll surface someday. Maybe that document will come into the Racing Museum.
I think it's gone. I mean, and it probably got shredded when they went to computers. The Vanderbilt name is very well known in this area, and Whitney. And, with Mary Lou's passing, that was like a devastating loss to local racing.
It was the end of an era.
Yeah, it was. And sadly, I read online today where the Katie Hill's up for sale, and
so Mary Lou's husband, John Hendrickson, is the chairman of the board of the Racing Museum. So yes, I think we all found out yesterday that Katie Hill is up for sale.
I know, it's sad. And John's a great guy. I mean, I really like him. He always stops over to say hello when during the meet and stuff. But yeah, the Whitneys and Vanderbilts were key to horse racing success back in the 40s, 50s, and then up.
Absolutely. So I think it was Alfred G. Vanderbilt, when he turned 21, his family gifted him over 1,000 acres in Maryland for a breeding operation. Wow. And that's where Native Dancer was a stallion, who is a prominent sire. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I mean, back in the day, talking today's day with syndicates, and basically anyone can own a piece of a racehorse. There's all sorts of, you can own for $1, you can own for, thousands of dollars. So it's nice that it's gotten to be opened up. But back in the day with the Whitneys and the Phippses and the Vanderbilts, it was, a one owner, one trainer, one jockey kind of operation. So it was done a bit differently, and it did take it did take a lot of money.
A lot of money, yeah. Well, and they invested in it, in the racing industry, and especially in Saratoga. I mean, everybody falls in love with Saratoga when you come here, especially back in the day. It was unique. And
absolutely. And the breeding program, I mean, what you're dealing with now with stallions and brood mares, wouldn't be what it is today without those families. Mm-hmm. But, Mary Lou's passing was very sad for the entire community. She was the Queen of Saratoga, and she was just an amazing woman who made you feel like you knew her. I was fortunate enough to meet her several times. And, she always greeted me by my name and, asked how I was. And, she was such a special gift to Saratoga and to horse racing.
Yes.
I know that there were also at times, pictures of her like on a motorcycle at a county fair,
Yeah.
so
She was a wonderful person.
She, if she knew a horse was going to foal, there was a story that she had the Whitney Emeralds and a ball gown on, and she went in and she foaled a horse, a mare and a foal. And then she was instrumental in what we did at the museum for 5 years called a full patrol program, where we had 24-hour cameras on brood mares in the stalls, and we educated people about that process. And then you were able to see a foal being born live in real time. And it was an amazing program because, Mary Lou thought that once you saw a horse being born, you'd be a fan for life.
Yep. That's probably true. And you can't speak enough about Mary Lou because she meant so much to Saratoga, in and out of horse racing. And she really brought a lot of things back in the days when Saratoga was only, the summer place to be for 4 weeks. But I think she put Saratoga on the map as far as more than just horse racing. But she always had those parties at the Canfield Casino. And she brought a lot of, she had one actress, I think, Mary Ann Mobley, I think. And she always had her and her husband up. But it was a different theme every year. And I remember one year it was Cinderella, and she came in on a pumpkin horse-drawn carriage. And I'll tell you, so many people.
Oh, and that's the thing. It was entertainment for the public and the crowd. I remember when she brought the Huskies or the dogs from Alaska, and she came in with Susan Lucci's husband there. And it was the like Iditarod type theme.
Yeah.
And it was pretty cool.
You could always count on her for fun. And she
fun
was
and
so
fireworks,
giving.
right? Weren't there always fireworks?
Fireworks, the whole shebang. She did so with the Museum of Dance, and she was a very giving person.
Yes.
I was telling you before the show, I was on the board of the Senior Center for 10 years, and I was the youngest member on the board at the time. And I wasn't even a senior, but every holiday she would do something for the seniors, because every holiday they would have a special dinner at the center, a holiday dinner. And at Christmas time, she had her a couple people bring in a banquet table size Christmas cake with a Santa Claus on the top of it that was also a cake. Then they would come in and they would get, and that was the biggest day of lunches there. And she would have her people come in and give each senior a gift. And right there she won over the senior population, but that's how she was.
Absolutely. So, and she was that same way with the backstretch community. Her and John Hendrickson. So, they started kind of the backstretch employees dinners. So they would do dinners throughout the whole race meet. And the local community is amazing. I don't want to start naming businesses because basically everybody stepped up, and I don't want to leave someone out, but everybody stepped up to this backstretch dinner. And they have one bingo night where they literally would give out not only cash, but bikes and, iPods and earbuds and things that the backstretch community could use. And it just was so generous and so nice and really kind of behind the scenes. The media loved her. She was an absolutely stunning woman and, very personable. So the media would love to be there, but they didn't need that. That's not what they were doing.
Even with the backstretch workers in it, they never publicized that they were doing. It was always, just something they did, and that. The name James Benton, he announced the museum would move out of the original quarters at Canfield Casino. And I know you talked about buying the property on Union Avenue. Do you have anything on the museum when it was in Canfield Casino racing?
So the History Museum, we work with them quite a bit, Jamie Perillo and Charlie Kenzel, and they're amazing. So knowledgeable. So there are photographs of when we were there, and we will. So I believe one of our galleries, which right now I have to share with you, is called Hot Dog, the Harry M. Stevens concessions.
He was there for years.
So the family came to us and was like, the Baseball Hall of Fame in Cooperstown did this big exhibit because Harry M. Stevens concessions were all over the ballparks, but nobody knows we did the racetracks. So right now, when you come into the museum, the first gallery you hit, which is a fairly small gallery, it features the Hot Dog Harry M. Stevens. So next year, that will be our 75th anniversary in the whole history of the museum, which will incorporate photographs and images from Canfield Casino.
That's interesting. Yeah, I know, because the casino area was nothing like it was today. I mean, but that's pretty amazing. And it's funny you say Harry Stevens hot dogs, because my brother-in-law, this was probably when he was in college, well, at least 50 years ago, he worked at the track and always mentioned Harry Stevens. I mean, that was kind of like for so long they ran the concessions.
Oh my gosh, absolutely. I don't know what year they stopped at Saratoga, but they did early 40s to 96, and I think in 96 they got out of everywhere because they even did the Kentucky Derby, Churchill Downs up through 96. And they really started those glasses that if anybody knows the big graded stakes glasses, the Travers Stakes glasses, Belmont Stakes, Kentucky, that was Harry M. Stevens invention.
That was his.
Sorts.
Wow. That's interesting. Yeah. And if you're there that long, you become part of the fabric of horse racing, even though you got the ballparks and that name was known.
Yeah, but there's something I don't understand, Rick. Why was clam chowder so popular in August for all those years? I guess, okay, clams are a summer thing, but like a hot soup on a hot day.
When it's 85 degrees out. Well, there's special things that people like, and I'm trying to think of a hot dish up there now, and I can't think of any, but I'm sure there are. I agree with you. I mean, clam chowder on an 85-degree day, and it's like, but people flock to it,
Yeah.
Now, I know there's a belief in racing today. We talked about, things changing and that. And racing shouldn't be a commercial enterprise. I believe that it should remain horse racing, and the focus should be on the racing itself. But a lot of tracks are going more towards, bringing different things into a racetrack, and in a way that may be good to get younger people involved, you know what I mean? But horse racing is a sport, and people love to see horses race, and I'm a believer that it should be a sport, not a not a commercial.
No. So what I can say is that during the pandemic, when all other sports shut down, we kept going.
I know.
And we did grow an audience because it was live action. You couldn't be at a racetrack watching, but the horses still ran. I mean, the employees still worked. And so I do know what you're saying, that some racetracks are bringing in, outside entertainment, but it is just kind of trial and error. There's so much for children today to get involved in. I mean, the sport has quite a few organizations. I'm on a board called Amplify Horse Racing, and it's a mentorship program. And it is, it's a wonderful organization, national, but based out of Kentucky, that's really just trying to grow the industry from youth up. We also have an education department at the museum. We're very fortunate to see every fourth grader in Saratoga Springs with that health, history, and horses component. But you really have to get children engaged before, I think it's 15 years old, or you're never gonna get them. Yeah. And music sells, and there's some. It's
It's a process.
Yeah, and it's unique. I mean, these animals are intimidating to some people.
They are. But, one thing Kim Weir from the Thoroughbred Retirement Foundation always mentions, that humans love horses and horses love humans. They really do. They have a way of understanding humans. And, and if it's just like animals. If you're afraid of them, they can sense that. And but
absolutely,
that,
we started with the TRF and Old Friends at Cabin Creek and Therapeutic Horses of Saratoga a few years ago. Something called Equine Sanctuary Saratoga, and it was the first year we did it was held when the Saratoga Automobile Museum had they shut down Union Avenue for a car show. So it was like horsepower we talked about. And one of the questions, the Auto Museum and I were interviewed, Horse Racing Museum and Car Racing Museum were interviewed by Saratoga Living. And what's the difference? What's the difference? And, horsepower, why are so many people or, women tied towards horses? And it's that human emotion. I mean, they're living creatures, whereas a car's a motor. It's just different kinds, and you can respect both of them. And there's a lot of interesting facts, but horses have that connection with. I mean, that's why they are used in therapy, and they are used with children with disabilities. And
yes.
You can look at a horse in an eye. I mean, I grew up riding, thankfully, but my mother was scared to death, and she just wouldn't come to the barn. But yet she could appreciate the connection that I, had with horses.
The horses.
Yeah.
You talked about Amplify. This a niece.
Yes.
And, we're good friends.
Okay, I didn't know that.
Oh, she always laughs at me when I try and pronounce her last name, because Montplaisir, and I always call her Montpelier for Vermont. And she laughs. She goes, "I'm not from Vermont."
Oh,
but yeah, we're good friends. We keep in touch during the year, and
she's also from, I think, Fargo, North Dakota.
She goes to North Dakota.
North Dakota.
Yeah, North Dakota. Yeah, she's from ND. But we keep in touch. I had surgery on my knee. I had a knee replacement in August, and she was sending me cards every month. And she's quite a young girl.
She's
lady.
Amazing. It's an amazing organization.
It is. And how I met her was she was an intern for Saratoga Special.
Right? Yeah.
Saratoga Special, and that's how I got to meet her, because they're up and down the stairs to the press box, and then we just got to be friends. And she's quite a girl. She's amazing. She's done a lot for the industry, and will continue to do great things, especially with her mentorship program. But you mentioned the Saratoga Special, which is interesting, and those are Joe and Sean Clancy, the Clancy brothers, from Maryland, Mid-Atlantic. Tom Law is local. He's wonderful. They do a really great job. Oh, they do.
The stories they cover, the sport, they don't miss a beat.
No, they don't. And I have to tell you, they may have the same one or two of the same interns that are there for 1 or 2 years, and sometimes just a year. But their writing is so good too. And the one thing I admire about them is they give college kids the opportunity to write about horse racing, and they always come back after they're done, and after college they'll come back to see everybody and watch the races, and they are really, really good people.
They are,
and I'm glad they follow the tracks too, because that's a good thing. And I know you said you used to be up in the press box quite a bit, so that's always a fun thing. Have you ever been up on the? I shouldn't say this, but have you ever been up on the roof?
Yeah.
Isn't that an amazing sight? Gosh, I tell you, they should sell tickets to take tours up there. That's pretty interesting. Talk about this year. Let me just put this in here. I have to do this in a half hour. You're listening to WSPN 91.1 FM Skidmore Radio, and phone number in the studio is 518-580-5783. And we have with us Cate Masterson, who's the director of the National Museum of Racing and Hall of Fame. And when you say national and you're local, that's an amazing thing to use. We have something coming in here for the next 2 years, and there's people that love it, and there's people that are afraid because it's so early in June, is the Belmont.
Absolutely. You couldn't have said it better.
I know, I tell you, it's something. Well, I told you I drive, I retired, and then I drive school bus, a small school bus for special needs kids. And it's funny because the Saratoga School District is thinking about canceling school for those 2 days because their buses we're going to have a hard time picking up kids. So we have special needs kids, and that means getting wheelchairs on and off the bus. And we're Union Avenue and Nelson Avenue, and boy, we're going to back up traffic for a mile. But it's interesting that it's starting early, and the racing will be in Saratoga for 4 days. So what's the museums? I know they have a lot of special things planned for that.
Yeah, well, a couple things I want to say. First of all, it's a historic. So the museum's all about history and racing, so this is historic. So it's not the first time that the Belmont hasn't run at Belmont Park. So the Belmont Stakes has run in 4 other locations. It ran in Jerome Park in the 1867 to 1899. Then it went to Morris Park, of course, Belmont Park, everybody's familiar with. But then in 63 to 67, it ran at Aqueduct. So it's, and the distance has changed over the years also. So some people who are really into horse racing know that the Belmont Stakes is typically 1.5 miles. It's being shortened to 1.25 miles because of the Saratoga racetrack here. But you talk about the 2 years and, those who are just super excited and those who are a little hesitant. We have 2 years to figure it out. So
yeah, exactly.
I figure, this year might be a trial of per se. But so the 4-day Belmont Stakes Racing Festival, the New York Racing Association has really embraced the community. I have to give them so much credit that they have, prior to them making the announcement, they reached out to the chamber, Discover Saratoga, the community, and said, this is what we're doing. We want you to be a part of it. We want to work hand in hand. And then once the announcement was made, they continue to bring in every organization that they can to say, how can we, make this as seamless as possible. So I did just hear, don't know if it's been announced, but I believe that they're going to do the draw on Monday of that week. So I don't know if that'll be a community event, and what the draw is for people who don't know, it's when they pick the post positions of the horses for the Belmont Stakes itself. So they'll know what horses are entered, but then it's, are they in post position 1 or post position 10?
Right.
So they actually, and then they do it old school, which is really cool. It literally is like, the number of horses in the race in like a pill bottle with, numbered pills. That is how the draw is done. So this sport, as modern day as we are today with the chiclets on the TV, they still do things in a very historical, old school manner. So on Tuesday, I know that there's a local, Donna Barton Brothers. She is the woman who everyone would know because she rides the pony on NBC for the big races, and she interviews the jockeys. She owns a home here in Saratoga, and she was a jockey herself. She's actually featured in our film at the museum. She really wants the community to understand how to handicap because a lot of people are, intimidated by it or don't really know it. So there's going to be an event at the museum on Tuesday evening, kind of like a handicapping 101. Mm-hmm. And then Wednesday night, we are going to welcome Tom Durkin and a few other entities involved, like a handicapping of sorts. But Tom's going to tell his best of Belmont stories.
Oh, really?
So he's going to pick some of the races that he called the Belmont Stakes and just talk about why those calls are so famous or why they're so important to him. So we'll be able to show the races in the Hall of Fame, and he'll be able to talk about it.
Let's see. It'd be nice to sell DVDs of those, too. Because he was unique in calling races, but that's pretty interesting. And, I just want to go back a few steps. We talk about adapting, and you talked about the COVID and that the races still went on. But there were quite a few people in the area then because the restaurants and different places had parties where they had the big screen TVs outside, and people could come in and sit and have party, drinks, dinner, or lunch, and watch the races. So it was almost like being in at the racetrack, but it was a little further away.
Yeah.
So
and it was actually, I think most of them did outside. The city was
they
shut
did.
down the streets, and it was like social distancing with entertainment.
Yes, exactly. And it was neat because it didn't give you the feeling that, it was a normal year at the racetrack, but it was an interesting thing that people could still get together and enjoy the races with other people around them, even though they were distance. And then the restaurants had outside tables, and I even think they went into the road. They blocked off so they could put tables.
Yeah.
So it was just a crazy time of the period in our history, but they made the best of what they could, and it worked out well for them.
Absolutely.
Now, the Travers, I want to get back to Belmont a little, or get back to the two women that rode and trained Belmont winner. But the Travers had a dead heat a few years ago, and that was the second time that the Travers had a dead heat. And do you know the story of that?
Well, I do know. I worked for Kieran when they dead heated with Alpha, and
I can't think of the name.
I know
of
it was
Kenny
Kenny McPeak's horse. The other one, I'll think of it.
Okay,
but yeah.
But back in the 1800s, they had a dead heat in the late 1800s, and they never accepted the dead heat as the end of the race. But I don't know if you know this, but an owner was telling me what they used to do was wait an hour, and then just those two horses would race.
Yeah.
And then the winner of that race would be the winner of the Travers or whatever.
I mean, I don't know that specific, but yes, I've heard those stories. But I mean, what I do know is that literally horses used to race like 3 or 4 times a day. It would be the winner would keep running.
Oh,
so
okay. I didn't know that.
Yeah, so there'd be Brian Bouye, who's our communications and Hall of Fame director, is just such a fountain of knowledge and information. And if anybody has any questions, he's just so great with the public. But we talk about, the changing in racing. And just recently we were talking about how horses used to win a heat, then they'd wait an hour, and then they'd run back against another group. So they would run 2 or 3 times. And they were running 2 to 4 miles, too. Not even these, sprinters. There's short races that we run today.
Well, I think today, as we evolve, I think horses do too. Back then, I think they were bred for endurance, and today they're bred for speed. So I think that may have had something to do with it, because I don't think a racehorse today could run 4 or 5 races a day.
Right.
You know what I mean?
They're just not conditioned.
The one that I saw was Linda Rice claimed a horse that won, and let's say on a Wednesday, and then raced the horse on a Friday, and it won both times. I mean, she saw something in that horse that, when she claimed it still had a lot of pep and energy. So, I don't know.
It's also, the trotters and pacers over at the Saratoga Casino.
Right.
I mean, those horses race once a week.
They do.
Yeah.
Well, you know what? I remember when I was coming up here back in the 70s, that you would have a horse that would run probably at least three times during the meet, and it was a 4-week, they may have went to 36 races at some point when I was in that time period, but they would race 3 times, and which was fun because you could have 2 more times to handicap,
right.
back. But so that evolved too. But that's interesting. And you talk about Brian. He is a fantastic guy. And I know 2 sports writers. Did Mike Cain write a book with Brian? Or
Mike Veach wrote the book.
Mike Veach
Cain
wrote a book.
Was Brian's position before Brian.
Oh, okay.
So Mike Cain worked at the Racing Museum as the Communications and Hall of Fame director. I believe that was his title. But yeah.
Yeah, because I know Mike wrote a book too, I think, on horse racing.
Yep, I believe he probably has. And then Mike Veach, who is the museum historian now, and was a teacher here in Saratoga Springs for years. He's just an amazing. He
Oh, yeah.
also answers a lot of public questions that get sent in. He and Brian wrote the history of the 150th Traverse,
Okay.
which came out a couple of years ago.
Yeah,
So.
I know Mike's very knowledgeable. I mean, the whole family is very knowledgeable about the history of Saratoga.
Mm-hmm.
And I know his son, Matt, who's been on the show before. And, he was telling me that the family grew up in the O'Brien Inn, what is now the O'Brien Inn. And he goes back decades and decades, so that there is a history in that family. And my wife went to Saratoga School, and she said that her best teacher, other than her mother, was Mike Veach.
Yeah, that's
because
great.
he made the history classes so interesting, and he was so knowledgeable, and he knew how the presentation. And she said that was her favorite teacher.
Just to sit and chat with him you learn so much.
And I was sad when he retired and wasn't coming up to the press box as much anymore, because he was always a fun guy to talk to and stuff.
Well, now you know where to find him.
Yes, I do. I know where to find him, and I am going to the museum. You may, like we talked about, people that live in New York never go to the Empire State Building, and people in Saratoga really don't go to the museum. And I know you're trying to change that.
Absolutely. Well, off season too. So I certainly can understand June, July, and August, the local community is not going to want to come in, when there's people from out of town traveling and it's kind of a madhouse. But we're open year round from October, or actually now this year, from Labor Day through May, we're open Wednesday to Sunday, 10 to 4. And then we do these, Saturday morning socials, which are complimentary admission from 9 to 11. Not every Saturday, but we're doing like one on Belmont Stakes morning. We do them during the racing meet. But we try to do events for the local community off season as well. Like March 30th, we're having Secretariat's birthday from 10 to 2. So a lot of kids activities. And so we do try to entice the local community to come in off season.
And they should. I mean, it's really a gift, really, to be in Saratoga, a national museum, and really we should learn about it. I mean, health, history, and horses.
Absolutely. Our movie's incredible, and we ran out of space for the Hall of Fame plaques. We have 470 Hall of Fame members, so we have 9 interactive digital screens where you can go through each Hall of Fame member. And the movie, which is 16 minutes, where the screens come down, we've had some kids during the pandemic go, "Oh my God, we haven't been in the movie theater in so long." And one kid said, "Oh my God, this is like Disney World," and it was it's a lot of fun to hear the comments and how people do enjoy being there. And then, of course, the local community. I was just down at in Tampa Bay, and at the Tampa Bay Derby, I run into a whole bunch of, local Saratoga, Cindy and Brian Hollywood with a whole bunch of their friends. And some of their friends were like, "Oh my God, we just went into the Racing Museum for the first time. It's amazing. We should be going every year." And I'm like, "Yeah, please come back."
Well, yeah, because you have so many exhibits. On your website, people can go there, and that's located at racingmuseum.org, which is a terrific website, by the way. But you can see the different exhibits and the different things you have in the exhibiting.
Yeah, absolutely. And our educator just did like a QR code tour. So you can do like a self-guided audio tour throughout the museum, which is pretty neat. Speaking of exhibits, our exhibits this year, Harry M. Stevens opened in January. That'll be all year. But then the other ones, which are the Passions of Paul Mellon, Horses, Art, and Philanthropy, and the Remarkable Ruffian, those will open on opening day, so July 11th. But the Passions of Paul Mellon, Horses, Art, and Philanthropy, I'm very proud of the team and the staff. We are going to be receiving loans from 8 other national and international organizations.
Really?
And it's something that, we haven't really embarked on or done. And this exhibit will, I think, so many art lovers. You don't have to really, be into the horses or the horse racing, but his true passion for horses for art and philanthropy, his gift giving was unbelievable. I mean, he was an incredible human being. But some of the artwork will be some of the nicest artwork in the country coming in.
Yeah,
so.
that's neat. Hey, I want to talk about one thing, just because it was interesting when I read it. The horse racing simulator. Now, what is
You
that?
want to come and get on?
Is that like the bull riding?
So I think you'll be fine because I think the weight limit's like 275 pounds. But we do have a racing simulator in our lower lobby that is the closest thing to riding a real racehorse. So,
Really?
and it's actually, you kind of trial, you learn how you're to balance. We put a helmet on you and a jacket. And you kind of lean back and forth. We make sure you're comfortable. And then there's a test out of the starting gate. So you can feel that initial jolt. And some people after that say, nope, this isn't for me. But then if you're good, if you can handle that, like start out of the gate, we then bring you to a 5 furlong race, which is a fairly short race at Saratoga Racecourse. It's all animated, but you see like Naira bets on the panels. You see the grandstand with the spires.
Right.
So you're coming down the stretch, and the horse it simulates, it moves. You have to hold the reins. It talks about your balance, and then it tells you where you finish. It's exhausting. I've ridden horses my entire life, and I still get off going huffing and puffing. So,
well, let me tell you, I'd fall off. Like some of the horses that rear in the gate, that would be me. First thing, I'd be flying right off of the thing.
It's a lot of fun, though.
I can
we
imagine.
actually do. We've done local schools, a gym class. We did an entire sports class. The gym teacher wanted to do a field trip, and that's what he did. So
That's
it was
neat.
pretty neat.
The only horse I ever rode was out in front of the department stores when I was a kid. They used to have the mechanical horses, and you put
in
a
a
dime
quarter,
in or a
dime.
quarter, and the thing would go back and forth, and you'd always say, Mom or Grandma, put another dime. That's about the most exciting thing I ever did. But I want to just talk a little bit about women in racing. I know Julie Crone and Jenna Antonucci, who just won last year, they're the only women to ride and train a Belmont winner. And can you just mention a little bit
Absolutely.
about them?
So Julie Crone won the Belmont Stakes in 1993 with Colonial Affair, which was a horse owned by a syndicate, Centennial Racing. And Julie is the only female jockey in our Hall of Fame.
Really?
Mm-hmm. So Julie's amazing. She's still around. Just a wonderful race record Hall of Fame jockey. Jenna Antonucci has been training racehorses for quite a while, and she was the best thing that happened to our sport in 2023.
Yeah.
I mean, so you come off of winning the Belmont Stakes, where she's just an amazing trainer, a wonderful spokeswoman, and then comes to Saratoga and winds up doing all of these, fun snippets with talking to the crowd in the back. And I don't know if it was daily racing form. It was a racing, kind of media entity. But I saw it on social media where she'd go in the back and talk to children and just, ask questions. What's your favorite horse? What's your favorite number? Or, why are you here today? Have you ever come to the races? And it was just so engaging. And from her, incredible Belmont Stakes win, she just opened herself up to the public and will answer any questions. She's really just a wonderful horsewoman. The museum will be honoring the connections of the Belmont Stakes. So Jenna Antonucci, the owner John Ebert, and the jockey, Hall of Fame jockey Javier Castellano. So we are doing a Belmont Gala at the Canfield Casino Thursday, June 6th. We have a limited number of tickets left. The venue can only hold 220, but we are doing that on Thursday evening. But Jenna and Julie, they're certainly special. We have another trainer. Jenna's not in the Hall of Fame. You have to hold a license. A trainer has to hold a license, I believe, for 25 years.
Oh, okay.
Jockeys hold a license for 20 years, I believe, to become eligible for the Hall of Fame. But hopefully someday she will be.
I would hope so.
We do have Janet Elliott, who's a female trainer who's in the Hall of Fame, and she's featured.
Really?
Both Julie Crone and Janet Elliott are featured in our film in little snippets as well. But Janet, she's born in Ireland, so happy St. Patrick's Day, Janet.
Yes.
She lives down in, I think, like the Pennsylvania, Maryland, Virginia, D.C. area. And she's just an amazing horsewoman. She has had an exceptional career with flat horses, but mainly jumpers too,
Okay.
steeplechase horses.
Steeplechase is fun to watch up there. I'm always out on one of at the turn when they come down the stretch. There's a jump right there, and that's where I'm on the infield to watch. Make sure if a jockey falls off, we have to do certain things and that. And they're neat races. I mean, I don't think every racetrack has
No.
that.
So steeplechase, people get nervous because horses fall and people fall, and it can be dangerous. But I believe, every sport can be dangerous. But with the steeplechase races, there's a couple different things. Horses are typically older.
Yes.
They run a bit slower. The jockeys can be taller and heavier than a flat jockey. The steeplechase jockeys wear their stirrups longer, and it's typically they're longer races. They're not sprinting
2
races.
miles.
They're longer races. But it's an American pastime. I mean, just like baseball, the steeplechase world, and it's very much, it's very active in the Mid-Atlantic.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, it's really neat. But another thing about Julie Crone, she was married to Fred Astaire, I think. Was that her? Was that Julie? Or
no? So there's a woman, Robin.
Robin. Yes.
So I'm trying to think of Robin's last name, but Robin, she was an exercise rider and a jockey on the track.
And she's a good jockey.
She is. Yeah, she's a wonderful. She lives out in California, but yes, she was married to Fred Astaire.
Yeah, that's neat. I mean, I love that connection when she was riding. You know, but let's talk a little bit. We have about 3 minutes to go. Let's talk a little bit about admission and becoming a member.
Oh, sure. Absolutely. So we try to, do kind of community days or free days here and there. Every NYRA badge holder, so that goes for you, Rick, because you're security guard. So free admission into the racetrack. We have an adult 18 to 64, which is $20. And typically you want to schedule at least 2 hours to kind of get through the whole museum, gift shop, and watch the film. Seniors, 65 and older, $15. Students and college kids, $10. Children 5 and under are always free. Museum members are always free. There's a Blue Star Museum program, always free. Veterans and active military, always free. So we're open right now. June 1st, we'll go 7 days a week, 9 to 5. But currently we are Wednesday through Sunday, 10 to 4. So, yeah. And
member, if you want to become a member.
Oh, my gosh.
You offer membership.
We do offer membership. So the membership levels, an individual starts at $65 and goes all the way to a lifetime up to $10,000. So there are definitely a big range there. But we try to do member benefits year round. And 2 of the events that we do are the Travers Eve Wine and Cheese, which is free for members.
Yes, I see that.
That's a great one. And then our holiday party. So, and then every member will also receive our Hall of Fame guide mailed to them, which is a wonderful publication coffee table book type style.
That's neat. Yeah, you have 9 levels of membership, so it's from anyone can become a member and feel comfortable in what it costs. So.
Absolutely, and we try to give back to our members year round.
Yep.
So.
And your volunteers. You probably depend on volunteers like every other organization.
So we use volunteers not only for, our tours and educational programs, but also for like our mailings, curatorial. Some volunteers come in and they polish our trophies, which is pretty neat. And they get taught how to do that. So, I mean, we have a volunteer position for anybody who's interested.
That's neat. And you can also give a gift. And you can give a gift in someone's name if you would like to do that also.
Absolutely. So we still have a brick program too. So for $150, you can get a brick in our Cornelius Vanderbilt Whitney courtyard. And then you can always give a gift in someone's name. And we're doing a new program about conserving our collection and giving a gift towards a piece of either artwork or an artifact that needs preservation.
That's neat. Well, Kate, thanks for being with me today, and I hope you can come back and, maybe later in the year and give us an update on what's going on, and we'll talk about the Belmont and how that made out here.
I would love to. Thank you so much for having me.
Okay.